They died smiling, offering soda cans and chocolate bars to a species that only understood dominance and pageantry. The Galactic Lords, 12-foot insectoid tyrants in robes of living silk, didn't know what to make of Earth's diplomatic corpse when they arrived. The humans, bright-eyed and brimming with charm, thought they could win over the galaxy the same way they'd negotiated their way through oil wars and Cold War standoffs. They handed out mixtapes and vintage comic books, delivered heartfelt speeches, and misread every cue from their hosts. In a universe of sharpened claws and iron rule, they brought soft words and friendship bracelets. The execution was broadcast live across the stars. No warning, no explanation. One moment, Earth's ambassadors were proposing mutual tech exchange. The next, a ceremonial blade, curved like a moon sickle, sliced through the air. Blood hit the ivory tiles like paint on canvas. One by one, the humans were cut down, their bodies left in a silent heap before the throne of Lord High Tyrant Vaquan. The alien lords didn't offer justification. They didn't need one. Earth, to them, had no weight, no teeth. The message was simple. Humanity was beneath diplomacy. Back on Earth, news of the massacre was met with stunned silence. For a full 60 seconds, the global response team stared at the footage looping on the giant screens. No one spoke. No one cried. The Secretary of Planetary Affairs slowly removed her glasses, cleaned them, and walked to a far wall lined with a single red phone, the kind built for calls no one wanted to make. "He's off the grid," a technician said, hesitating. She didn't blink. "Get him on." Somewhere far off in the deserts of Nevada, past miles of scorched rock and satellite blackouts, a man sat alone in a trailer older than most countries' governments. His boots were kicked, up on a cooler of canned chili. A crowbar leaned against a crate of old VHS tapes labeled things like Predator, Critical Study. A walkie crackled once, then a voice came through. Just 2 words. "It's time." The man didn't speak. He stood, stretched, and opened the cooler. Inside was a custom-molded holster that held a matte black revolver engraved with 27 alien dialects for problem solver. Next came the boots, thick-soled, steel-capped, worn at the edges. Then the coat, brown leather, patched at the elbows, lined with lead mesh. He pulled a small cassette from a tin box labeled "For Vengeance Only," popped it into a dusty Walkman, and hit play. The opening chords of Metallica's One growled through his headset. His name didn't matter. It had been erased decades ago. He had no service record, no digital fingerprint, no family history. In official records, he was a designation, Warden Class 0. In whispered rumors across hostile planets, he was known only by inference. The thing Earth sent when diplomacy failed. The weapon they aimed when war wasn't enough. His flight to the Galactic Core wasn't filed through any official channel. He boarded a transport disguised as a retired freighter pilot, using outdated Earth credits and an attitude so obnoxiously human that customs barely tolerated him. By the time the Lord's surveillance caught wind of his presence, he was already on their moon, renting a hotel room with a fake name and a fake mustache taped under his nose for no reason other than it amused him. No, one questioned the lone man carrying 3 duffel bags and humming "Paint It Black" under his breath. The galactic elite didn't see threats in humans. Not anymore. They didn't register the sharp glint in his eyes or the ancient Earth military tattoo faded across his forearm. They certainly didn't notice the tiny earbud feeding him audio scans of the spire's security frequencies. The galactic spire rose like a needle through the planet's golden clouds, surrounded by hovering shrines and tribute pylons from the 1,000 lesser systems that bowed to the lords. Inside, endless polished corridors echoed with robotic servants, feathered guards, and the cloying scent of imperial perfumes. It was a city built on decadence and terror. They had never lost a war, never met resistance they couldn't erase. Until now, in A dim war room beneath the Earth Embassy. A panel of grim-faced officials reviewed old files, footage from Operation Obsidian, black and white stills of battles where the Warden had intervened. Each photo showed the same expressionless face, the same brutal efficiency. His kill count was unconfirmed, his methods unrepeatable. He had once been ordered to dismantle a rebellion on a methane-rich moon. The result was an ice sculpture made from a frozen palace and 346 enemy corpses arranged in a single geometric symbol, Earth's flag. They had locked him away not because he failed, but because he didn't know how to stop. On the Galactic core moon, the Warden checked into a bar across from the spire. He ordered something labeled Sappho Drip and poured it into a thermos marked motor oil. The bartender, a two-headed Ploran with one good eye between them, tried to make conversation. The Warden ignored them. A lord walked in, tall, glittering with arrogance, flanked by two silent guards. The alien sneered at the humans sitting alone. "This sector's off-limits to primitives." The Warden took a long sip of his drink. "Then I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The lord scoffed, turned, and walked out. That lord was found the next morning in 7 pieces, each arranged precisely to form a warning only Earth operatives would recognize. 3 circles, interlocking. The symbol meant retaliation underway. The lords convened immediately, disturbed but still dismissive. Their death squads were dispatched, patrolling the moon's surface and raiding human hideouts. They burned down a relief camp, interrogated ambassadors' families, and stormed the Earth outpost. But the Warden wasn't there. He was never where they expected. Instead, one by one, their planetary governors started dying. Not loudly, not with chaos. Quietly. A poison in a ceremonial chalice. A collapsed gravity field in an orbital suite. A personal shuttle hacked mid-flight and piloted straight into the sun. At first, the lords believed it was rebellion. They blamed planetary unrest. But the pattern didn't fit. No demands, no manifesto, no resistance to interrogations. Just a silent, surgical unraveling of their command structure. Whispers spread among their people. A name surfaced, passed from smuggler to pirate to warlord. The Warden. In a command chamber miles below the spire, Vaquan stared at a hologram of Earth. The human's blue marble looked too gentle to be dangerous. He watched the footage again, Earth's ambassadors offering snacks and smiling. One of them had even offered his translator a gift, a tiny plush bear with INY stitched across its belly. Vaquan had crushed it beneath his foot. Now he wasn't so sure. Reports showed alien troops abandoning posts, officers refusing missions near human territories, civil unrest rising in sectors previously loyal. And still, no one had seen the Warden. Only aftermath. Only damage. Then, one of the Lord's own, High Executor Zarn, confessed in front of an audience of 1 million viewers. He confessed to atrocities, to mass slavery, to manipulating council votes. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice trembling. When asked why, he held up a small Earth relic, a cassette labeled Greatest Hits, Vengeance Mix, and said only, "He found me." The broadcast cut to static before Zarn's body hit the floor. Vaquan crushed the table in front of him. He ordered the spire locked down. No more travelers, no more foreign envoys. Their dominion was crumbling from shadows, and he knew the source. But it was too late. The Warden was already inside, moving through the spire's belly like a phantom, leaving no trace but cryptic notes etched in bloodless knives and obsolete USB drives. He wasn't here to make a statement. He wasn't here for political leverage. He had a simple mission. The galaxy had made a point by killing diplomats. Now he was going to make one back. And unlike them, he didn't need an audience. He only needed results. Outside the spire, the clouds rolled like thunder made solid. Somewhere on a balcony, unnoticed by the dozen drone patrols scanning the city, a man in a patched coat looked up at the skyline and lit a match with his teeth. Behind him, the silhouette of the galactic spire glowed like a monolith of arrogance, waiting to fall. He took one last drag of an Earth cigarette, flicked the embers over the edge, and whispered to himself in a low growl, "Let's see how these space tyrants handle a little American accountability." Then he stepped into the storm. The spire's inner sanctum wasn't built for defense. It was built for worship. Towers of gold-veined crystal rose through the structure like the frozen bones of a dead god, each humming with energy pulled from collapsed stars. The lords thought, it's sacred, untouchable. At the apex sat the throne chamber, where Vaquan ruled with ornamental rage and centuries of unchecked power. His warlords had never lost control of a system. No foreign force had ever breached the inner spire. And now his elite guard was vanishing one by one without a trace. Their armor was found folded on their bunks. Their weapons melted into slag. Their communications logs wiped clean. Vaquan refused to speak the name aloud. To name a thing was to give it shape, and he believed this phantom had none. But his war council buzzed with theories and dread, huddled like children around their data hollows. They called him the Shadow, the Deathwalker, the Terran Ghost. But the data told a simpler story. Each assassination matched a unique pattern, non-repeating, theatrical, undeniably personal. Each target had been involved in the execution of Earth's diplomatic envoy. This was not warfare. This was vengeance, scaled up to galactic proportions. Far below, in the humid belly of the spire, the Warden moved through steam tunnels and waste corridors designed for unseen laborers. His boots echoed against metal grates as he advanced, one step at a time, guided not by maps, but by instinct sharpened through decades of war. His only companion was the low hiss of his cassette player, looped on an old Springsteen tape. Though music bled into the dark like a whispered challenge to the elite rulers above. He wasn't a brute. He wasn't chaos. He was precision honed into a human body. And he had a list. The lords had believed Earth was soft because they mistook kindness for weakness. They saw humor and assumed irreverence. They saw pop culture references, breakfast cereal mascots, and dance challenges, and mistook it for distraction. But Earth's greatest weapon was never its military. It was the terrifying unpredictability of a species raised on both Mr. Rogers and John Rambo. The Warden was a living product of that contradiction, part poet, part predator, the kind of man who quoted Shakespeare while building improvised explosives out of flavored gum and an alien microwave. Back in the Spire's security hub, Overseer Thrin, a violet-skinned technician bred from 4 generations of signal interpreters, desperately tried to make sense of the data chaos unraveling across their systems. Surveillance nodes were blinking out. Audio channels were hijacked. Every 20 minutes, one of their internal stations played an Earth song from the 80s. No one understood the lyrics, but the rhythm was tribal, defiant. Their translators barely parsed the words of Back in Black before the servers fried. Thrin turned to Vaquan during a high-security briefing, trembling. This isn't war. It's mockery." Vaquan narrowed his eyes, the light from his iridium scepter casting shadows across his mandibles. "It's human." That word had become poison in the room. A word that used to mean pestilence, inconvenience. Now it meant danger. Now it meant something you couldn't see until your throat was already cut. In another wing of the spire, the Warden stood face to face with one of the executioners, a creature known as Sural, the Iron Voice, who once boasted of killing Earth's youngest envoy by crushing her communicator mid-transmission. Sural had mocked her dying words, recorded them, and played them during his birthday celebrations. The Warden said nothing as he approached. Sural lunged with both scythe arms extended. The Warden ducked under the first, deflected the second, with a metal-plated forearm, and delivered a single shot from his revolver, angled upward through the creature's sternum. Sural died mid-taunt, eyes wide, breath stolen from the lungs he'd used for mockery. On the wall behind Sural's corpse, the Warden carved a sentence in alien glyphs. Rough translation: Diplomacy died. Justice woke up hungry. It took 43 minutes for the spire to discover the body. By then, the Warden had already dismantled 2 power relays and redirected the sewage pressure to burst in the Lord kitchens, flooding banquet halls with steaming alien waste. This wasn't strategy. It was style. A warning delivered in punchlines. Vaquan doubled the guards, issued kill-on-sight orders, and unleashed his personal hunter-class assassin, Cravat. A bioengineered tracker made from the DNA of 12 predator species, Cravat was designed to eliminate chaos before it grew roots. He had ended rebellions with only his claws and a whisper. He spoke only once per target. No exceptions. He was given one order: find the Terran. Make a display of him. Meanwhile, the Warden made his way through spire maintenance ducts, humming, the Ghostbusters theme under his breath. He slipped past a group of elite guards rehearsing a ceremonial chant and paused just long enough to roll a flashbang down the corridor. As it exploded, he scrawled, "Who you gonna call?" on the wall in chalk made from powdered nutrient packs and charred alien bone. Back on Earth, the military brass watched encrypted feeds in a classified chamber 6 miles below Kansas. They didn't issue updates. They didn't send backup. They did what Earth had always done when unleashing its last resort: nothing. They let him work. The global reaction was complicated. Civilians grieved the diplomats but cheered the anonymous warrior, tearing through the galactic elite like a chain-smoking cowboy with a cosmic vendetta. A black market T-shirt with the slogan, "Say my name, I dare you," sold out in under 12 hours. The Warden was already a myth, growing in real time. Cravat finally caught a trace of him, an unusual heat signature moving through one of the spire's forbidden floors, a level supposedly used for relic storage. The predator stalked through the shadows with patience bred into his bones. What he found wasn't the Warden. It was a recording, a hologram of the Warden moonwalking across an alien monument while holding a sign that read, "Nice try, Velcro." The feed self-destructed, triggering an EMP that knocked out the hunter's sight for 13 seconds. It was enough time for the Warden to drop a thermal beacon in Cravat's personal quarters. When the hunter returned, he found every wall of his chamber covered in hundreds of printed images, each one showing the Warden making increasingly inappropriate gestures in front of galactic holy sites. On the mirror was a note written in red grease: "You should smile more." Cravat screamed for the first time in his engineered life. Vaquan watched all this unfold with a fury that turned his breath acidic. This wasn't just infiltration. This was desecration. The Lords had ruled through fear for centuries, and now fear was eating them from within like a parasite wearing human boots and humming Bohemian Rhapsody. He summoned his war council, demanded orbital scans, atmospheric scrubs, DNA traces. Nothing worked. The spire's most sacred systems were being mocked in real time, turned into punchlines in a joke no one else got. Then came the message. It was simple, broadcast across all galactic frequencies. A human voice, low and steady. "You executed peace. I'm executing the follow-up." Followed by a 20-second audio clip of "Born in the USA," distorted through alien speakers. Across the galaxy, slaves rose in silent cheers. Colonized moons threw off their chains. The Lord's authority, once unshakable, now looked like a bad joke with a terrifying punchline. Other races, long subjugated, took inspiration from a man, with no name, no army, and no filter. Vaquan issued a final order: "Bring him to me alive." He would show the galaxy what happened to insolent primitives. He would drag the Warden into the light, strip the myth from the man, and crush him publicly before the entire galactic broadcast network. The throne room was reinforced. The guards doubled again. Psychic barriers installed. Every inch of the spire pulsed with anticipation. But the Warden was already watching. From a hidden alcove behind a decorative pillar carved from the bones of extinct stars, he stared at the throne with calm, clinical detachment. In his hands was a small device rigged from half a dozen alien relics and an Earth Game Boy. Its single, button read, "Play Endgame." He wasn't here to negotiate. He wasn't here to provoke. He was here to end the myth of galactic invincibility. And Vaquan had just stepped into his final chapter. Vaquan sat motionless upon his throne, talons clenched around the arms with a grip that cracked the alloy beneath. His court stood paralyzed, uncertain whether to breathe. The spire's defensive grid hummed at full capacity, tripled in redundancy, and layered with overlapping shield frequencies. From the outer corridors to the sanctified apex chamber, every entrance had been welded shut, every passage sealed with gravlocks, psychic barriers, and armed sentries ordered to fire before verifying identity. They weren't expecting an army. They were preparing for one man. The Warden had not been seen in 67 hours. No bodies found. No signals traced. The quiet was worse than the chaos. The Lords knew war. They didn't know silence. In the depths of the spire, engineers worked in shifts without pause, repairing the damage left in the Warden's wake. Melted circuitry, corrupted data cores, tactical AI driven to insanity by corrupted Earth memes embedded in their visual logs. One AI had self-destructed after processing a single looping GIF of a human child, slapping a bear with a slice of pizza. Even Vaquan didn't understand it. That frightened him more than anything else. If this was madness, it was deliberate, patterned, purposeful. Cravat remained sealed in isolation, eyes closed, still processing what he had seen. He had faced rebel kings, slaughtered hive minds, ended a solar cult by personally collapsing its neutron shrine. Yet the Warden had humiliated him with nothing but suggestion and timing. The Predator's mind, built for patterns and aggression, now churned with a new sensation. Self-doubt. "Why didn't he kill me?" Cravat asked aloud. There was no answer. But in his chamber, the lights flickered in a rhythm too precise to be coincidence. 4 pulses. A pause. Then 3. Earth Morse. Translated, it said, "Not yet." High above, Vaquan addressed his people for the first time in days. His voice, transmitted across the networks, declared victory before it had been won. He called the Warden a coward, a shadow that feared the light. He offered a reward for capture: status, land, immortality within the spire's legendarium. No name was spoken, only titles. Vaquan still feared the sound of human syllables in his mouth. On the edges of the Empire, his message was received with mixed reaction. The colonies heard a different truth. The myth was spreading. Children on mining moons etched symbols of Terran ghosts into stone. On slave worlds, banners appeared overnight, crudely drawn images of a man with a skull painted across his chest, holding a sword in one hand and a cassette in the other. The Warden's work wasn't brute force. It was viral. Every death, every sabotage, every recorded quip was fuel to a fire the Lords couldn't control. Inside the spire's most guarded wing, the throne's auxiliary control node blinked awake for the first time in centuries. It had been abandoned, deemed unnecessary due to redundancies in the central systems. No one noticed the temperature change. No one saw the diagnostics reroute. No one understood the cost of ignoring forgotten rooms. He was already there. The Warden leaned against the console, flipping switches with quiet precision. Around him, relics gathered dust, ancient weapons, failed prototypes, ceremonial tech, never tested in real conditions. He ignored them all except one, a small cube pulsing with blue light, humming in rhythm with his breathing. It had once powered the diplomatic shuttle obliterated by the Lords in their theatrical execution. It still carried the DNA signature of Earth's ambassador, the last whisper of peace, stolen and buried by bureaucracy. He pocketed the cube. This wasn't about retribution anymore, not solely. It had evolved. Every life he ended now echoed further. Every lord executed made the next colony braver. The myth wasn't accidental. It was methodical. Fear used properly could destabilize empires without firing a shot, but it needed punctuation. A final act. A crescendo. The apex chamber. Vequan's guards remained alert but weary. Their armor weighed heavier than before, not from gravity, but from dread. No one wanted to admit it aloud, but they had stopped believing in their invincibility. When the lights dimmed slightly, they clutched weapons tighter. When the air grew too still, they looked over their shoulders. Every mechanical hiss or floor creak made them flinch. Fear eroded discipline faster than blades. And then the music started. From nowhere and everywhere at once, a human melody filled the spire. Not a war song, a ballad, melancholy, defiant. The voice was gravelly, the lyrics unclear to alien ears, but the emotion pierced through translation barriers. It wasn't a declaration of dominance. It was a eulogy. For peace. For trust. For the naive hope that civility would protect the weak. Vequan rose in fury, demanding silence. But the systems ignored his commands. Screens throughout the spire activated one by one. Each showed the same image. A Terran face, obscured by shadow. Below it, a countdown. 10 minutes, panic struck the court like lightning. Officers scrambled, some issuing contradictory orders, others abandoning protocol entirely. The elite guards sealed the throne chamber. Defensive turrets armed. Cravat was pulled from isolation, his claws glistening with biochemical toxin. Vequan stood at the center, refusing to yield ground. If the Warden wanted an audience, he would have it. The throne would not be abandoned. The countdown ticked. In the chamber's sublevel, hidden beneath a false floor installed during the spire's third age of expansion, a maintenance shaft hissed open. The Warden emerged slowly, breath even, heart rate low. His eyes scanned for motion, but he found only silence. He moved through shadow with the grace of a dancer and the certainty of a mathematician solving for X with blood instead of numbers. He had no army. He needed none. Every system routed through this level. Communications, security, environmental, controls. The Lords had centralized for efficiency. That mistake would cost them everything. From a panel embedded in the wall, he accessed the subgrid, bypassed failsafes, triggered a cascading loop that nullified psychic barriers and rerouted oxygen through carbon filters. Non-lethal, disorienting, enough to make them hesitate. He needed only seconds. The final minute began. Above him, Vequan stood alone now. Even Cravat had taken a step back. The music shifted. A new voice, younger, brighter. A human child reciting a poem, one broadcast during Earth's final appeal to the Galactic Council. The words were translated perfectly this time. If peace dies in silence, let justice roar like thunder. The countdown hit 0. The floor beneath the throne cracked, not an explosion, precision detonation. The structure gave way, revealing the Warden rising from the smoke, backlit by emergency lighting. No weapon raised, no speech delivered. Just presence, real and undeniable. Vequan reached for his scepter, a weapon of devastating force. He activated its core, ready to vaporize the intruder. But the Warden didn't move. He stared directly into Vequan's eyes and tossed the cube. It landed at the Lord's feet. The cube activated, projecting a memory. The execution. From multiple angles. Unfiltered. Raw. The child diplomat's last words. Vequan tried to destroy it. The Warden moved faster. A single shot shattered the scepter before it fired. Sparks flew. Vequan staggered. Krivat lunged. The Warden caught his momentum. Mid-air, redirected it into the throne with a brutal twist. The Predator collapsed, breathing but unconscious. A message, not a kill. The lords watching from hidden terminals across the Empire saw everything. No words were spoken. None needed. The message had already burned into every data core, embedded in every network. The myth had become fact. The Warden stepped back into the shaft, vanishing without a final blow. Vequan, broken and bleeding, fell to his knees, surrounded by silence and the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. And across the galaxy, something shifted. Not just fear, not just awe, hope. But myths don't end with mercy. And the Warden had one final target. The galaxy held its breath. In the wake of the Warden's unexpected victory, whispers spread through every corner of known space. Fearful, anxious, the lords, once invincible in their power, now faced the unimaginable. The rise of a solitary figure who had not only shattered their defenses, but humiliated them in their own stronghold. Vequan's pain was personal now. His throne was no longer a symbol of dominance, but a stain, a testament to his failure. He refused to show weakness, but deep down, his confidence wavered. Krivat had not regained consciousness since their last encounter, but Vequan was certain the traitorous warrior's silence was more about strategy than injury. Krivat had never known defeat like this. The realization gnawed at him, an unfamiliar sensation. His mind churned with both rage and confusion. How had a single human outwitted him? How had their plan gone so catastrophically wrong? Vequan's chambers were cold and silent, save for the occasional hum of the defense grid. His thoughts were a whirlpool, spinning around the implications of the Warden's actions. There was no doubt left in his mind. The human was no mere terrorist or fugitive. The Warden was a harbinger, a force of nature who seemed to understand the lords better than they understood themselves. He knew how to manipulate the intricacies of power, and more importantly, how to turn it against them. The lords had always seen themselves as superior, beings above the fray, detached from the pettiness of mortal struggles. They had subjugated countless worlds, extinguished entire species, and forced galactic empires into submission. But here, with this lone human, they found themselves standing at the edge of the abyss. The realization stung. They had underestimated humanity, as they had underestimated every challenge that had ever come their way. The Warden wasn't a conqueror. He wasn't a destroyer. He was an idea. And ideas, Vequan knew, were harder to kill than armies. Far from the throne room, a different kind of tension was building. The Warden's success had ignited a revolution across the colonies. What began as a whisper soon became a shout. People no longer viewed the lords as gods or untouchable rulers. They saw them as tyrants, fallible and weak. The news of Vequan's humiliation, the failed execution of the Earth diplomat, and the Warden's wrathful revenge spread faster than the lords could contain. Every system that had been subjected to their iron grip began to stir, rebellious sparks igniting in the hearts of those who had been oppressed for centuries. In the shadow of this growing insurgency, a new leader emerged, Captain Marta Levens, a former soldier of the Terran Alliance, now a symbol of the rebellion. Her name was whispered in the same breath as the Warden's, for she too had taken up the mantle of resistance, leading an army of refugees, militants, and former slaves, who had once cowered beneath the heel of the lords. She was sharp, tactical, and ruthless. Her mind was as finely honed as a weapon, and like the Warden, she understood how to use fear against those who thought they held it. Unlike the Warden, she didn't seek to create myths. She sought to dismantle the machinery of oppression, piece by piece. In the dim glow of a war council's makeshift room, Levins addressed her commanders. The plans were laid out before them, every detail painstakingly calculated. Yet, even as she spoke, her thoughts remained elsewhere. Her mind kept returning to the Warden, to the solitary figure who had struck fear into the heart of the Lords, even without firing a single shot. She had seen him once, briefly, in the midst of a firefight, but his presence had been like a wave crashing against the shore, an overwhelming force that left everything in its wake. It was impossible to ignore him. Impossible to deny that somehow this man had become the galaxy's most powerful weapon. "Do you think he'll come for us?" Levins asked her second-in-command, Commander Cruz, a woman whose scars told the story of countless battles fought in the trenches. Cruz glanced at the map, but her eyes seemed distant, as though she was grappling with an answer she didn't want to give. "It's possible. He's dismantling everything they built. He's become the symbol they fear the most." Levins nodded, her gaze hardening. "We need him. We don't have the resources to fight this war on our own. The Lords will come for us. We need someone who can make them bleed. Someone who understands what it means to take everything from them." Cruz shifted, uncomfortably, her voice lower this time. "But what happens when they finally catch him? What if they break him? What if they make him suffer for everything he's done?" Levin stood, pacing slowly, her boots tapping against the floor. "If they break him, he'll break them right back. He's not afraid of them. Not like we are. He's got something they'll never understand." "And what's that?" Cruz asked. Levin stopped and turned toward her. "Hope. Hope. And the fury that comes with it." Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, the Warden himself was on a path that few could comprehend. He had achieved everything he had set out to do, tore through the Lord's fortress, exposed their vulnerabilities, and left a trail of chaos that reverberated through every star system. But what next? What was the next step for a man who had already burned the bridges of peace? He stood alone in a cavernous hangar, looking out at the stars through a viewport. His mind was heavy with the weight of the choices ahead. The Lords had bloodied their hands, but they had not yet realized that their real enemies were the people they had oppressed. The Warden had stirred something deep within the galaxy, a sense of rebellion, a refusal to bow to tyranny. His role, as he saw, it was no longer just about retaliation, it was about liberation. It was about giving the galaxy a reason to rise up. A small vessel sat in the hangar bay, a piece of Terran engineering modified beyond recognition. It was unremarkable in appearance, but it carried the full force of Earth's anger. He had been told to keep it as a backup, a final piece of contingency. But now, staring at it, he knew the time had come. The Lords would never learn from their mistakes. Their pride was too great, their arrogance too deep. And so, the Warden would make them listen, just as he had done with Vaquan. The galaxy was a powder keg, and he had just lit the fuse. The Warden reached for the control panel, initiating the launch sequence. No more games. No more time for subtlety. The galaxy would be reminded of one simple truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. The Lords would learn that, just as the rest of the universe had. His silence had already shaken them. Now he would bring the storm. Outside, stars swirled in their infinite dance, unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. And the Warden, for the first time in years, smiled.